So we've talked a little bit about becoming a dancer. We talked about becoming an atheist, but one of the reasons why you were on our radar is because you've written several books, one of them about debunking and deconstructing myths and things that maybe not be true. And also most recently, one that kind of melds your experience in the sex work industry with your opinions on religion and on atheism. So I'm curious to talk a little bit about becoming an author and what that looks like for you. So do you want to maybe first start out talking about how you came to the idea to write about these experiences of yours? Because I know earlier you had mentioned that you came to write this last book because of somebody you met at the Freedom from Religion Foundation, but you had already written 2 books prior. So how did that journey kind of start for you?
Well, I've always read. Books have been kind of my first love. They've been my escape. I was a kid in the 80s, so, there wasn't a lot on TV. So I read a lot. I've always wanted to be a writer.
It was on TV in the 80s? Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh, no. I know. I just wasn't. I had brothers. They made me watch Star Wars, and that was literally the last time I watched Star Wars in the 80s. And I really haven't looked back.
That is okay. But giving you a hard time. Continue.
I expected it. It's okay. Maybe I deserve it. I don't know. But I probably won't know because the likelihood of me watching it now is pretty small. But like I said, I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, so books were really a lot of times my friends. That was my go-to. And so I always wanted to be a writer. I never really thought I could. After I started dancing, I think I was about 10 years in, maybe 15. That's when the idea in my head started coming, hey, maybe you should write about dancing. Everybody always says, oh, you should write a book. And nobody really does, right? And what really kind of kicked me in the butt to start writing my first book actually had to do with religion, kind of ironically, because I didn't realize that it would end up where it is now. But we had a Christian group that would come into the clubs that would try to rescue the girls. And in our local area, I happened to know the woman that ran it. I worked with her when I first started dancing. We were never really friends at all. But she basically portrayed it as all these girls need to be rescued and that none of them wanted to be there, that if you were a dancer or in any kind of sex work, nobody loves you. You obviously need Jesus, and nobody respects you. You can't be happy or healthy or anything like that. And it really, really, really made me angry. That you did drugs. And it was like, no, you did drugs. You did that. And you were unhappy and you felt unloved and disrespected. And apparently you needed Jesus. And so I finally started writing and I thought, what, I'm just going to write my story. And it's probably unfair to put all the blame on her in particular, because there was a lot in the media, Dr. Phil. So let's put a big chunk of this on Dr. Phil. Thanks, Dr. Phil. Because I got tired of seeing that on TV, that same stereotype. And she was now exploiting that, talking about exploitation, and saying that some of these girls were actually trafficked. So in getting money for her organization, she was saying that, we're saving these women and we're stopping them from being sex trafficked. And it was like, no, she knows better than anybody else that there's no traffic victims in, Wayfair's not selling and shipping kids to the strip clubs. That's not how that works.
It needs to be said. I don't know why it needs to be said, but I appreciate you saying it.
It does. Because she actually I'm not friends with her, but I happened to see her comment on a thread about Wayfair and how horrible it was. Oh my God. Somebody has to stop them. I'm like, well, order a cabinet and call the FBI. How about that? Stopped. So, but I just got tired of the stereotypes and I got tired of the misconceptions, and some of them are earned. There's some horrible things that happen in the sex industry, but it's not always like that. And it really irritated me. And so it irritated me enough to start writing. And I wrote this whole book and I started soliciting publishers and agents. And I got I don't even know how many rejections, probably not as many as I, should have, before I just decided to self-publish. And And then as I started to think about quitting dancing, I wrote a second book, which is basically like a series of essays that talk about the different aspects of the industry, how to deal with rejection, how to deal with misogyny, and how to exploit misogyny, how to deal with those types of things. Like I have a chapter on fetishes and things like that. And then I got involved with the atheist community because there was a church. Once again, if they'd just, seriously, they came to me, they'd have just left me alone, I would be here. But my son, it started to affect him. There was a church that was giving away bikes to his whole school, but you had to go to a church event to get your bike. And the school sent home flyers, and I ended up contacting, I had been following FFRF for a while, and I ended up contacting them, and they wrote a letter, and they got it stopped. They stopped. I think the event still happened, but they got the school to stop doing that, which was good because it put my son in a weird position, because I was like, well, you're not going to this event. Number one, you don't need a bike. And number two, this, now you're a target of bullies because you're the only kid that didn't get the bike because your mom didn't let you go so it was just all bad. And I ended up submitting an article to them. They published it, and they had their convention close to me in San Francisco. So I thought, you know what, why not? So I went to the convention, met my chapter president, and she told her about my other books. And she said, well, how fast can you write a third one? And that was how my third book was born. Turns out about 8 months.
Nice. That is not a bad record.
Yeah. So it was, I guess I was a reluctant activist. It was not necessarily my intention, but it was really born out of protecting my son. And at least my third book was. But my first one was definitely a bit of anger and annoyance at the stereotypes and things that were, I was tired of people always asking me, are you a drug addict? Are you a prostitute? Does your boyfriend, play guitar and sit on the couch and smoke pot all day? It got old. So.
Oh, for sure. And now the response is, you can read my multiple books on the subject and fuck all the way off.
I tell you what, man, it's one of the reasons why I quit right after my third book came out, because it was like, you know what, man, I did this. I wrote about it. I was able to tie in, some of the activism, the misinformation, the conspiracies, the part about really examining yourself to be able to create a better life by letting go of some of the things that you may have, your dilapidated beliefs, if you will, about not only the world and beyond it, but about yourself. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff that I think we have a lot of hangups that that hold us back. And so that's really, it's really where it came from.
I'm curious a little bit about the editing and marketing process for the books that you've written, not just the last one, but, all the books that have to deal with these very sensitive topics. And I know that you mentioned getting rejected a bunch of times at the beginning. From my own experience, it does feel like both the editing teams and the marketing teams that would have been involved in publishing these books would have had very strong opinions about, the directions that they'd be going in, or maybe the target audience that they should be focusing on. Can we talk a little bit about maybe what that experience was like? And did you feel supported by your team in getting your message across, or did you feel maybe like you had to fight for it a little bit?
No, I felt totally supported because I did it all myself. So I self-published. I had been working with a friend of mine on my first book as an editor who had just gone through an editing class. And so she was going with me chapter through chapter, and she didn't have any opinions on anything. But by the time we were done with the whole thing, she had been running it through an editing program. And so what happened was she changed a lot. We had talked a little bit before about sarcasm font. Well, she changed a lot of, and I don't think she did it. I think it was a program or something that she had used that made everything grammatically correct, but it completely changed the tone, and in some cases drastically changed the meaning. So what I wrote didn't make sense anymore, basically.
Oh, goodness.
So my first book definitely could have used a professional editor in that respect. And so there's still a couple of mistakes in that book because I rejected all of the edits, because it changed the entire thing. It wasn't even the same book. It didn't have the same meaning. So I let that go. My second book, it's really short. So it's only like 65 pages. And that was a little easier for me because I was kind of used to I had my own process at that point. My third book, the editor is actually the chapter president of the FFRF here in my area, Judy Saint, ironically. Definitely somebody I would consider a mentor and a muse. Certainly one of the greatest people to come into my life out of all of this. And I write about that actually in the third book and how we met. And because I was worried about people at the convention looking at me weird because I was a dancer. And I felt such a sense of community when I was sitting there and, Dan Barker singing and playing the piano and doing his thing. And I was like, God, this is so awesome. And I turned to her, and we just met. I turned to her and I was like, this is really great. And she looked at me and she said, "You're home." And I tell you what, that was one of the most profound moments in all of this. And after that, we started to work together, and I absolutely felt supported. She kept me on message. She helped me figure out what to say and what people wanted to hear from me, and helped me really hone my message as to what I wanted to say and how I was able to tie in dancing to atheism, humanism, actually, and also debunking pseudoscience and all that other stuff. So the third book was definitely probably more close to a traditional type publishing experience, but it's also self-published.
Okay, wonderful. And hey, that is definitely an option to go with. I will never diss working with freelance editors, working with freelance marketers. Those people know their stuff. So yeah, that is awesome. And that experience of being at a convention for the first time and just feeling that community is very close to home as well. In fact, I think
it was profound.
We were going to be on the same stage at the AA Con that would have happened in 2020 had COVID not hit. So I'm glad we're actually able to meet up and to talk. Before we wrap up, I do have a final question for you, which is, are there other books you want to write? Is there anything else that you feel you need to say? Any other messages you want to get out there? Or maybe are you thinking about going in a new direction?
Well, both of those things. So because the atheist, agnostic, free thought, whatever community has been so supportive of me, I mean, like just incredibly, more than I ever thought, and far beyond Twitter, just even our local groups. We have a blasphemy breakfast that we used to do. That was awesome. I will always be a part of this community. They're basically what led me to where I am. So I've written a few articles for Freedom from Religion Foundation, and I will continue to do that as long as they'll take me. And I've written a couple of articles for some other publications as well. And I've started writing fiction, which is really if I want to go back to like when I was a little girl, that's what I've always wanted to do. So I have 2 short stories that have been published now. I have a third one coming out in January, and I'm actually wrapping up a novel that I'm writing with another author that's actually kind of like a crime type thing, like a murder mystery type horror thing. That actually will have a traditional publisher. So talk to me in a little while and ask me the same question, and I will have a different answer, I'm sure.
Well, we'll have you back on.
So fiction is kind of where I'm going. Like I said, I will continue to support the cause and be a voice. And at a bare minimum, I want to make sure that I'm always adding support to people and let them know that they can be comfortable saying that they don't believe and that there is a community or there are friends, even if it's not a community. Obviously, atheists are all over the freaking place. But there's somebody else out there, and you don't have to continue to believe in things that you don't, because that was, I think, one of the most damaging things for me, was constantly feeling like I had to be fake. And I really want people to know that you don't have to do that anymore. But I am planning on moving into the realm. I guess I'm already there into fiction, but writing is really something I'm passionate about. And fiction has been a lot of fun for me over the last, I don't know, 6 months or so.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to hear. I'm all about that. And honestly, fiction is one of the most powerful ways to get messages across in those sneaky ways where you're like, haha, I made you like a character who you would judge in real life. So that's really exciting. Yeah, we'll have to have you back on once that's out and you can pitch it.
I have to learn how to do that. I'm still not very good at that.
You've done good so far. Okay, well, thank you so much for being on the show tonight, Erin. I really appreciate having you on, and the honesty and the just the enlightenment that you brought to the show tonight was really, really enlightening, and I really enjoyed it. Can we look at the crew cam real quick and pull that up so we could thank our lovely crew for everything that they've been doing tonight?
Yeah, I got a couple people training, got a full house of people working tonight. Thank you all so very much.
That hardworking kitty.